civilian political opinion. You see, when we talk about the military, we're not just talking about guns.
That's right.
We're talking about preparing a political environment in which people cheer on the guns instead of protest the guns. But in addition to those political manipulations, the report concluded that the gray areas of the world must be further contested and militarized. And by gray areas, they mean every place else outside of Russia and China, who are the strongest military resistance to U.S. imperialism, strong enough that the U.S. wants to avoid direct confrontation with them. But every place else becomes the gray area. And so U.S. political military policy, because you can't separate the two, political military policy is to stage its holding action, its last stand, which turns into a scorched earth kind of policy in the gray areas. The Pentagon report said right out, either you go gray or you go home. Going home means ending imperialism, so they're not going home. These gray wars include Afghanistan, certainly a holding action that the United States, no one believes that they can possibly win. Donald Trump comes in basically acknowledging that it's already been lost. But it continues and continues and continues. Now in its 17th or 18th year, the pundits, the corporate media have their arguments about why the United States stays there. Well, they stay there for the same reason they're staying everywhere else. It is this holding action. It is this constant warfare, which is the only tool that they have as they desperately hope for some kind of break that will break the main military opposition, China and Russia. They have some reason to believe that this might happen because until 1990, 91 or so, we did have a Soviet Union that presented not only the greatest military resistance to U.S. imperialism, but was a bulwark of a kind to the political and resistance in what they now call the gray areas of the world. So they have some reason to hope that if they can keep the war churning and create conditions for war, and if not conditions for war, just conditions of chaos, that someday, somehow, the dice is going to roll for them. And the streets of Beijing are going to be full of people to overthrow the Chinese Communist Party. Or that some oligarch will replace Putin and say, let's make a deal. Or something like that. So that's what they're counting on. And they're going to keep up these wars until they cannot. Now, how do you take the power to destroy the world from a ruling class that gets that power? You have to break their will, and you have to shatter the political apparatus that underpins them. And that is what the anti-war movement is about. And of course, all black liberationists are by definition anti-war, because we are anti the ability of imperialism to wage war against us. And that lays the basic political foundation for the Black is Back coalition. Because we fight against imperialism at all levels to break its will and ability to oppress us and release the forces of democracy that we represent. Self-determination being the purest expression of democracy. Now to the people.
Thank you so much, Brother Glen, for that powerful political analysis. And now, our next commenter will be coming to the stage is Sister Margaret Kimberley, also from the Black Agenda Report, another very dynamic and excellent analyst. We are all right. Thank you.
exalted white America would be.
Oh.
It was a huge scandal. Until that time, it was called the Executive Mansion. It had no real official name. But after this story exploded, Roosevelt tried to, first they said, well, he didn't really have it. Well, he had dinner with Mrs. Roosevelt and one of the daughters. And he said, well, the ladies weren't at the dinner. And then they were like, well, it was lunch, not dinner. And they said, well, they really said hello. So anyway, at the end of this brouhaha, they issued an official statement that the residence would be called the White House. That is how it came to be. Anyway, thank you so much. Thank you, Chairman Omali and Yoshitela, for inviting me again. It's no accident that we meet here in Washington every year right before Election Day. And so here we are again. We're always on the cusp of these phony elections, this fake democracy.
Yes.
And in 2 days, we are told that every couple of years, like, it's the biggest election, it's the most important, it's the biggest, it's the biggest, it's the biggest. And this year it's the biggest because of Trump. So I'm calling it, it's like it's mania. I'll be glad when it's over. I'm not the only one, I'm sure. I get these emails, just send money to so-and-so to defeat Trump. I see the ACLU, most of the organization, they have these ads on Facebook, just vote and we'll have a better criminal justice system. They don't mention that there aren't any or hardly any elected officials talking about criminal justice. But anyway, if you send them a check, if you vote for a Democrat, they don't say Democrat, but just vote and that'll all be cleared up. So Trump is, as presidents always are, Trump is the one who sets the agenda. And whatever his many shortcomings, intellectual shortcomings, you have to give him this. He knows his people. He knows how to push their buttons. He knows how to get them out. So, for example, there are people fleeing Honduras, a country that had a democratic election that was undone with the help of the Obama administration.
That's right.
Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton overthrew this government. So now since that time, there's been terror against that population, deaths, lots, privatization, poverty, and people are fleeing Honduras. They're not fleeing Nicaragua, which they don't seem to ever point out. But anyway, so these poor people are hoping to get here, even though they're going to be separated from their families when they get here. They're just hoping for something better. And when this story broke, they had just crossed the border from Honduras to Guatemala, which is about 1,000 miles from the U.S. border. But Trump, being who he is and knowing his people as he does, makes this big thing about people being at the gate. They're right here on the border. They're 1,000 miles away. Most of them probably will turn back. Most of them will probably never reach here. But he knew how to galvanize his people. That's one of the reasons he became president. Build a wall, make Mexico pay for it. And then he mentioned something else last week. And that was the issue of the 14th Amendment of birthright citizenship. Passed in 1868, I believe, one of the post-Reconstruction constitutional amendments, which gives citizenship to anyone born in this country. And he says, and with Trump, I'm never sure if he's deliberately BSing or he just doesn't care. He's like, no, the country has birthright citizenship. There are 30 countries that have birthright citizenship. We're between two of them. Mexico and Canada both have birthright citizenship. But at any rate, nobody else has this. We're going to get rid of it. The illegals come here, they have babies, and we have to take care of them, blah, blah, blah. And but something happened that was pretty shocking to me. It was very sad to see Black people saying that would be a good thing. To end birthright citizenship. This would be, even if you don't care about immigrants, even if you don't care about the moral argument, this would be an absolute disaster for Black people.
That's right.
I cannot believe that I actually read people, and I've got to stop being addicted to social media because I consider it foolishness. But anyway, occasionally I do learn something new. And I learned that there are Black people who say this would be a good thing, the immigrants are taking our jobs, it's not fair, and they don't even stop to think about the people who are behind this. We're always told Trump is our enemy, the Koch brothers are our enemy, they're all racist, they hate us all, and now people want to trust them with our citizenship rights. And it struck me that Africans are at war, and we're going to have to be at war with some of our own people.
Yes.
People who spread that kind of foolishness are a danger to all of us, that they lack so little intellectual capacity, common sense, that they would actually say this is something that would be a good thing for us. You know, there were more countries that had birthright citizenships who have changed those laws. And they always do when there's a tipping point of Black and brown people.
Yeah.
So the UK used to have it,
Yeah.
and they got rid of it.
Mm-hmm.
And in the past few years, they've been taking citizenship away from people who immigrated mostly from the Caribbean, the so-called Windrush generation. They have made people unemployable, taken their health care, not allowed them to come back into the country, to take away their citizenship rights. These things never work well for us. Never, ever. Ireland had birthright citizenship until a lot of Nigerian immigrants started coming in and they didn't have it anymore. But at any rate, I could go on and on with that. So here we are before Election Day, and all we hear about is Trump. And all you need to do is vote blue, no matter who is at how it goes. And when Black is Back Coalition first formed, it was Obama who was to be defended at all costs. And now we have to have Trump on the brain at all costs. Not ask any questions, not demand anything of the Democratic Party, just we have to fight Trump. And he makes it so easy, being such a vile person. But that's no reason for people to stop thinking. And but that's unfortunately where we are now. This election is the most important election ever. Everyone's the most important ever. And this one is because it's somehow going to take power away from Trump. But let's look at history. Suppose the Democrats take back the House. Nobody thinks they're going to take back the House. Suppose they take back the House. What are they going to do? What are they saying they're going to do? They're not even saying they'll do anything to help people. Are they talking about Medicare for all? Are they talking about ending student debt? Are they talking about raising the minimum wage? Any of the things that people need and want, which would sweep them back into power, undo all their losses, but they're bought off. They don't want to do it because the people who give them money don't want these things. So they know, when people say they don't know how to win, yes they do. They do know how to win, but they decide not to because they have chosen sides with people who do not mean well for us. I saw something interesting in the New York Times yesterday, and they had an article called How U.S. Law Enforcement Failed to See the Threat of White Nationalism. And I said to myself, that's because law enforcement is white nationalism. And I said, do I really have to read this? I'm sure it's, several thousand words. And anyway, eventually today on the way here on the bus, I said, all right, I'll read it. Sure enough, this reporter was like, it's a big mystery that, police across the country ignored this threat, and they didn't do this, and no one knows why. But then she gave herself away. She said, and she's Jewish, she said that, she interviewed one of these Nazis, and she said something to the effect of, when I spoke to him, I felt no reason to be afraid of him. And I said to myself, that's because white supremacy is normalized. So, no, you as a Jewish person, you don't have sense enough to be scared of talking to somebody who's a self-proclaimed Nazi. But that's what we're up against. So this woman, I'm sure she's a liberal, I'm sure she's the resistance, I'm sure she's going to vote blue no matter who and whatever. But this is somebody who's not going to defend us. If people aren't defending themselves, they're not going to defend us either. So Tuesday night, I'm sort of curious to see who's going to win. But I know it's not going to impact our lives any. I won't say any. Who knows what they will do, but I am not expecting any great new day if the Democrats happen to get back into office, where they can make deals with Republicans. That's what they want to do more than anything else. So Trump is, it's a funny thing. They talk about Trump, he's crazy, he's a psycho, he's a racist, he's dangerous, he's stupid. But then he'll do something that is dangerous for the entire world and he'll say nothing. For example, a couple of weeks ago, he unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from a missile treaty with Russia. Now these are things we need. This treaty, the INF treaty, goes back to the days of Reagan and Gorbachev. These are things we need. But he unilaterally withdrew the U.S. from the treaty. And what did the Democrats say? Nothing. Nothing. Not a thing. So ordinarily they'll say he's too stupid to have his finger on the nuclear button and look at his dumb tweets and blah, blah, blah. When it came time to really stand up for humanity, to stand up for the entire planet, we heard nothing from them. And we're about to celebrate, I think a week from today, the 100th anniversary of the end of World War I, which started out being called, we call it Veterans Day. It was called Armistice Day. It was supposed to be a celebration of peace. But the Americans were like, we're not really about that. So it's a little called Veterans Day. Anyway, I just wanted to say that. So world leaders are going to meet, and who knows what they'll do to get fly on the wall at those gatherings. But those powers did not think they were starting a world war in August of 1914. They didn't think so. They all said this will be over in a few weeks. It's, a couple of skirmishes here or there. It's all going to be over. They did not know what they were doing. They did not know the disaster that they were bringing down upon humanity. And I feel as if that's happening again now. I mean, as Glenn said, the goal of the U.S. is to try to control those gray areas. But we don't know what they're going to bring upon us. And it's not just Trump, it's not just because John Bolton works for him. It's all of them. It's the Democrats too. It's the leaders of the NATO nations. Have you seen them dragging these little tiny countries into NATO? They want, Macedonia, which they couldn't figure out what to call it. And all these little insignificant countries they're trying to put in NATO. They're trying to put South American countries into NATO. This is extremely, extremely dangerous. And I wish this election were as important as they say. And what I mean by that is, I wish we had a real democracy, and I wish we had real differences instead of this duopoly that we have. So that if we are inundated with emails about you gotta go vote, it actually would mean a difference. But it does not. And that is why when we come together, we talk about self-determination, we talk about democracy, we talk about socialism, we talk about all of the things that will save this world. Lately there's been a lot said about the tipping point in climate change, which did that start in January 2017? Was the Earth okay before Trump was inaugurated? I don't know. But this is what they do. It's interesting, Trump has proven you can get away with anything if you just talk nice, which is a sad comment that Obama and these other people could get together at these climate conferences and shake hands and say, we're going to let the climate go up 2 degrees, which is absolutely disastrous.
Oh, yeah.
And everybody patted them on the back. And that brought us to where we are now, with life on Earth at risk.
Yeah.
So my time's up. Okay. So thank you all. Thank you again. And let us all remember on Tuesday, whatever you do, let's all remember to fight for self-determination.
That's right.
I couldn't help but to notice that as Margaret talked about it, our life on Earth without to be changing or ending, the time is up. Also, just real quickly, I can recall that the Democrats had the White House and control of both houses. Barack Obama for the first 2 years, and we had war and police brutality and injustice. I can recall when George Bush was president, the Democrats got control of both houses again, and we had war and continuous police brutality and poverty and all this kind of misery. But I guess it just depends on how it affects and how it's. Our next presenter on this portion of the panel will be a person who literally needs no introduction. Our chairman, Omali Yoshitela. He needs no introduction because he's representing his own community.
First thing I would like to do is to acknowledge these incredible presentations that we just listened to. And I think it's testimony to the profound significance of the existence of the Black Inspired Coalition for Social Justice, Peace, and Restoration. Because I don't think you can come any place, certainly in this country, and have this discussion. And if you can hear, then you will see that there are some differences in terms of what and how we understand and experience and explain things on the one hand, but on the other hand, there's a serious thread of science and analysis that's been brought to us that challenges a lot of what's been happening, and it certainly attacks all of the assumptions of the ruling class in this country, whether it appears to us in blackface or whiteface, etc. The truth of the matter is, a U.S. patriot is a white nationalist. And we have white nationalists, we have black white nationalists, we have Mexican white nationalists, and a whole bunch of other ones. Because patriotism is simply loyalty to the ruling class, to the state, to the existing social system. So I'm really impressed, and I'm sure everybody else is. And there's a lot I'm reminded of what we used to call teach-ins, and which was critical toward developing the kind of struggles that would, change the world. I wanted to say that, first of all, that I am the chair also of the African People's Socialist Party. And as I mentioned earlier, our mission is revolution and the actual capture of political power. Because, like you, I'm tired of being in a situation where we have to hope the next crew or the next guy is going to do the right thing and wish for it. And the real way that we know the right thing is going to happen is that we have the power ourselves.
That's right.
And so that's what we're about. And as I mentioned, we just came out of our 7th Congress that was attended by African people from various places around the world. And some of the comments from the continent of Africa couldn't get here because the United States doesn't allow Africans to come to this country easily unless you're in chains. This is the most difficult thing in the world for ordinary African working class persons. Don't have to be working class. I'm talking about teachers and other folk, who cannot get into this country. That ain't Trump, by the way. So that was a criticism, by the way. I want to say that this theme for this conference, for this rally, and I love the rally, And I love that march. Every time we do that, the march wasn't large as I wanted it to be, but when we come down there and all these Africans start coming out in these places and throwing up the fists, and the African bus drivers honking the horn and throwing up the fists at us, etc. It's really important because they haven't seen this in a long time, not coming from black people, because everything's supposed to be settled and we're supposed to be out of action. So we made an important statement to our community. And I wanted to say that from my perspective and the perspective of our organization is that it is true that Africa is at war, and Africans are at war wherever we are. But the truth of the matter is that Africa has been at war. If we want to talk about our coming to this part of the world for 600 years since the Portuguese first came to Africa and kidnapped and took the first African into slavery. And that's when it started. And we haven't had a bit of let up since then. When we talk about what happened on Ferguson, it couldn't happen in Ferguson if the first white person hadn't come to Africa and forced an African to do something against our will, stick us on ship, and all the other horrors that happened to us who came on this, and all the Africans who left there, the horrors and everything that we experience as black people around the world, not just here, everything has its origin in that initial attack. In fact, Karl Marx used to call it having the equivalence of what do you call it? What's the, say it again, original sin. You know, this was in the political economy. He called this the primitive accumulation of capital. This is how the whole thing started. He said turning Africa into a warren for the commercial hunting of black skins. And he said, and what they did to the indigenous peoples here. This is the primitive accumulation of capital. He said it is as significant in political economy as original sin is in theology. Right? So this is where the whole thing started. And we ain't had no let up. There's never been a time that we've had any let up at all. And I think it's important for us to understand that somebody took away our capacity for self-determination. I don't care if they call it slavery, I don't care if they call it Jim Crow, I don't care if they call it integration. What has happened is we've been robbed of our capacity to be a self-determining people. That's why Brother Siddiqui was out there. And all the other people who actually stood up to make this struggle, because we don't want to be like that. Nobody wants to say that our future and our children's future is in this place that we have nothing to do with. And if you tell the truth, there's not an African that I know any place who can say with any kind of certainty that our children will have any kind of future. That's just the reality that we live with every day. That's why your high blood pressure and all those other kinds of things impact us as a people. And that's why it's important. I know the women, Sister Siddiqui, her father and her mother were part of the revolutionary movement. And then we have sisters in Huntsville whose children have been murdered by the police in this room right now. And there are other people, parents, who suffer those kinds of consequences. This is not some abstract, university kind of discussion. This is a discussion that people who have been affected in a very serious way and conscious of that, how we've been affected, want to do something, want to get involved. That's just to say, the guy who killed her son, he needs to pay a price. And she says she wants justice. She wants justice. And how do you get justice from somebody who killed your son? I mean, how do you get justice? Justice won't come because they give you some money. Right? I mean, the closest thing that approximates justice for the taking of that life is that guy loses his life. His mama needs to be having the same kind of problem that she has. If his mama that's what's been justice. But I want to say that this issue of the crisis of imperialism is really important because it exists. It's been going on for a while. We've had some of the most significant thinkers of the white ruling class been writing about this crisis for a long time. People like Brzezinski. Some of you are familiar with Zygmunt Brzezinski. Yeah. He's taught arc of crisis. He's seen it. And you know where the crisis comes from? The crisis comes from the fact that capitalism is a parasitic social system that started off slavery and colonialism and has created this thing. It is the world economy is based on that. And it can only maintain itself through maintaining our relationship to it as slaves and colonized people. When people are fighting back and taking their resources, are threatening their recourse to take it back in a serious enough way, it goes into crisis. Every time, that's the basis of the crisis. I don't care how else you call it, because you see this in every instance. You want to see the oil prices go up? Yes. Let somebody sees those oil fields in Africa or some other place, boom, oil prices go up. The crisis of imperialism is based on the ongoing struggles of the people in resisting our conditions. That's why there must be permanent warfare. There must be these attempts to try to keep the people locked down, because imperialism cannot be successful unless it maintains this relationship that it has with us. You're not going to have a kinder and gentler imperialism, which is the only thing that Obama's and I like to call his name because I want people to think derisively of him as often as possible. But this is the Bernie guy, you know. I detest Bernie Sanders. I detest Barack Hussein Obama because they are traitors. They are betrayers. They're betrayers. They're betrayers of the African people. They're betrayers of the working class of the world. They have this white man stand up and say something that he stands for socialism, and that socialism is that you will get $15 an hour over a period of years. How the hell is that socialism? What socialism is he talking about? The socialism that we understand comes as a consequence of the working class seizing control of the means of production. The working class seizing control of the state. And when the working class does that, we tell Bernie Sanders how much money he can make. So there is a serious crisis afoot. And that makes it very dangerous, because Glen does this splendid job, you know, talking about how these guys begin to cannibalize each other. And the greater the crisis of imperialism gets, it means that the pie is shrinking. The pie is shrinking. Their greed is growing. Their concerns are growing. And then, you know, like Comrade Margaret just mentioned, this guy is saying, you know, unilaterally getting rid of the nuclear arms treaty. And they're doing other stuff. That's just part of the kind of challenges militarily that they're making with China. On a regular basis, this stuff is going on. Flying bombers capable of nuclear capacity around the Russian border. This stuff is going on every day. Even as we're having this discussion now, it's happening. These kinds of confrontations. And I think it's really important for us to understand that, because the possibility of war is very serious. But our responsibility is, you've heard it before, is to turn this imperialist war into what? Civil war. Right. To turn the imperialist war into civil war. I mean, our children not only should we not die for them, we should be trying to find a way how we can live for ourselves. We can't live for ourselves unless we bring the entire social system down. Right. So I know I don't have any time, but I wanted to say that, but neither does imperialism. And we just came out of an extraordinary 7th Congress of the African People's Socialist Party. I wish you had been there.
We watched it.
You watched it? Yes. Okay, right on. It was an extraordinary Congress. And I can't, you know, state enough about how the struggle for us to recapture a capacity to take power, because that's what it's about. I wouldn't spend 20 minutes trying to integrate with white people, white power. I wouldn't spend not a single minute. We have to be able to capture power. But this coalition talks to us about power and self-determination, and John Barack made the point that, or Glen, I think, that self-determination is the highest expression of democracy. You can't say there's some democracy if you ain't got no self-determination. And I don't give a damn if it's a Democrat or Republican, but I think that it is absolutely true that the electoral process is simply a method of nonviolent contest between sectors of the ruling class for control of the state. That's why you keep hearing this discussion about deep state, CIA, FBI, the military, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Who's going to control the state to their profit-making advantage? That's what the election's about. In fact, the political parties are functioning as arms of the state themselves. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at a Democrat and a Republican.
Exactly.
So we have to build an independent capacity. And this is what I think this coalition talks about when it talks about self-determination. We have to have the ability to determine our own future. And I've seen, yeah, she's got something that says time is up. And I don't think she's talking about imperialism. But I just want to extend another shout out of appreciation. I just think these have been incredibly important discussions that we're having. Nobody will leave here without something to think about. And I think that's extremely important. It's not that dull stuff that you get from Lion, what's his name? Lion Dillon?
Him too.
Or CIA and you know, it's not that insipid discussion. These phony so-called left and right discussions. How the hell, you know, they got a left. The Democratic Party is the left. Please. And it's sinful. I mean, and the thing is, man, I'm going to sit down and come out and promise you. I'm moving toward myself. It is almost sinful, you know, like how they create this incredibly false narrative to give people an assumption about the limitations of the choices that we have. And if you look at what's happened with this political arena, what you see is both the Democrats and the Republican Party in a state of shrinkage in terms of their immediate influence of the people. And you also see, as I think Margaret Kimberley just mentioned, that you can't just say Trump and the immigrants. White people and the immigrants. When Trump knows his base, he's calling the white people because he knows white people will be down with that, generally speaking. And that's what the Republican Party, more than anything now, stands out as being. They've taken off all the guises of being something for all the people, etc. We have to be what we need to be. We need to be for black people. We need to be for the liberation of Africa and African people. We need to be in solidarity, actual, material, functional solidarity with the oppressed peoples of the world. We need to stand shoulder to shoulder with the Palestinians. We need to lock arms with the comrades from Mexico, which is we need to separate ourselves from imperialism and form these new kinds of alliances that need to happen so that we can all be united against this common vicious social system and the American government itself.
Thank you so much, Brother Chairman. Next, we're going to have a 10-minute question and answer period. I will ask everybody to please make their questions and or comments succinct, no longer than about a minute to ask, but please also be mindful when answering them. Do you have a microphone set up so people can? Okay, anybody have any questions? You should please line up over there, Brother Diaz. And you can direct your questions to the panel. Questions?
How y'all doing? My name is Bruce, and Captain of Card of Orion. My name is Priest and Captain of Card of Orion from the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge. Started out at 1 West 125th Street in Harlem, New York. And if I could, I would like to make a comment.
Yes.
I appreciate that. A lot of things that I've heard today are very, very impactful to see that black people do start to realize the damage that this society has done on our people. And one thing that is a major tenet in the Israelite School of Universal Practical Knowledge is that our first aim, first and foremost, is to fix the black community under Commander General Yoshitela. And to fix so-called African Americans, we have been failed by our so-called African brothers. Our so-called brothers from Africa have watched these so-called African Americans be killed and slaughtered by the police and have done nothing. So the efforts in the black community and the Israelite School of UPK are only given to black people, to help black people, to get them off of drugs, to get them off of their oppression and out of their destruction. You understand? Our brothers, our so-called African brothers, have watched and have failed us in helping us. They have never helped us. How long have we marched and rallied against white America, and our so-called African brothers have never helped us? In the Israelite School of UPK, we aim to help black people by gathering black people together with themselves and separating from American society. Political power will never free black people from oppression. Black people joining themselves together and separating their minds from American society is the only thing that's going to liberate black people. And lastly, the major tenet that we teach in the Israelite School of UPK and the Commander General Yoshitela to help black people understand the condition in America is that the white man is the devil that the Bible speaks of. The white man, and to further edify what I said about him being the devil, and that he has lied. That's what it means to be a devil. A devil is a liar, a deceiver, and he has stolen from us. And to understand your oppression, you have to understand your enemy. And the white man is our enemy.
We want to understand, respecting this process. You split it, you made your points, and I think you heard them and what happened, but there are other people who want to speak to them.
I always almost finished before you.
You really, but you were wonderful already. And I just think there are other people who have things to say, and they should have an opportunity to say that. Yeah, thank you, brother. Thank you so much.
If I may, I was almost finished before you interrupted. But last, I did want to say that is our mission to understand your enemy.
What I would like to suggest, if we have a couple of more questions, and then if the panelists want to address that, we maybe hear from a couple more people who might have a comment, is that, and then the panelists can address. Right, 1 minute, exactly. Okay, 1 minute. And can we hear somebody comment? Okay, great, 1 minute.
My name is Yoshitela. Good morning. Officer in Investor Politics. My question is directed to Chairman Omali. What is the position of how can we as black people manipulate our politics in order to facilitate our freedom and liberation? Like what role can politics play in this?
You mean by politics, you mean electoral politics, right? Because almost everything you do is political. So you mean, and the best thing that the coalition has offered up, first of all, that we're not going to be free from the electoral process. But what we can do is use the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination that the people participated in developing and demand that all people who are engaged in that political process and saying that they want to represent the interests of African people, they have to submit to that national black political agenda that comes from our community. So that's the first thing. But the freedom won't come through the electoral process, but I think it offers us a greater platform to advance the struggle and win more and more people to active political life and to a greater understanding of dealing with the material interests of our people. Somebody spoke of coming at John, to deal with some of the material interests of our people, and I think that's what the National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination does. So if you really want to spend time campaigning to win that, among people, that's right on. I mean, I got a phone call, I didn't get a phone call coming at inviting Annette in St. Louis. I mean, Clara McCaskill, wanted to meet with her, etc. Because that's woman who's running for, is that Senate, you know, in Missouri. And, but we don't have time for Clara McCaskill to prove fealty to the 19-point National Black Political Agenda for Self-Determination. That's our starting point. And people met with her and said, well, we're asking her for $500,000. What's your ask? You know, we don't need money from McCaskill like that. What we need is, can you unite with this political report, this political agenda we put forth? And of course you can't. And but that's what I think, that has to be the starting point, you know, for us. You know.
We have 5 more minutes. Does anybody have, maybe we can have a time for one more question, and then the rest of the panelists, if they want to address some of the comments that have been made, can come up here to do that. Any more questions? Okay. Well, would any of the panelists like to address any of the comments maybe that we've heard? Because we have 5 more minutes left in this session, so we would like to address anything we've heard. So I'm glad we're so ready for the revolution. We got it all off and stuff like that. No more questions, no more comments.
You want to say something? Did you want to say something? Well, that's all right. That's all right.
That means we're ready. It's all wrapped. It's all done. We're ready. Thank you, everybody, so much for that very, very powerful session. Thank you.
Fight back! Fist up! Fight back! Get your kids on my back! Okay, so next we will be bringing up the president of ANWO, and y'all, like, as an African woman, like, ANWO means so much to me because it speaks to, like, Sherman talked about the 19 points. The first point is, like, African women, because in the past we've seen, like, African women stand to the sideline and let the men do it, when African women are the backbone of every organization, and everyone knows this. So if you don't have African women in your forefront, you're in trouble, because African women hold everything together. We hold down the household, we hold down everything. So if African women are not there, you have a problem in your organization. So we're going to bring up the president of ANWO, Yoshitela.
Another round of applause.
I forgot the rules. I don't touch the mic. Okay. So I just want to thank everybody for being here today. Yesterday was an amazing mobilization. You know, I just think that in all areas of our work, we see the strength and the organizational ability of African women. And, you know, it's, I think, sometimes underestimated the power and the ability that we have to, like, really analyze and bring, you know, the work of African liberation to the forefront. And, you know, as a leader of the African National Women's Organization, it's my responsibility to look at the conditions of African women and see how best we can organize the poor, oppressed, colonized African women who are day-to-day being abused by the system under colonialism. And oftentimes when I talk about the condition of African women, you know, people's minds are drawn to just some of the things that have been, you know, happening in the news right now, which, you know, might be, you know, the whole question of, you know, sexual exploitation and things like that, but it goes deeper than that when we're talking about colonialism. In so many instances, like, you know, in the hood, in the community, you know, the ways that the state moves in to really keep African women tied to itself is really deep and profound. You know, we work with, we have worked and continue to work with this question of, you know, state-sponsored kidnapping of African children by the state, and how many African women are really involved in the struggle to get their children back. It is deeper than just this whole question of the state and the women. It's the court system, the police, it's the child care workers, it's all of the people who
who are working together to keep these women just really tied to this. They can't see beyond this question of trying to solve the colonial contradiction to the question of freedom. And so the African National Women's Organization is here to intervene in these situations to help African women to see that this is all a part of the ongoing assault against African women. And even in this current state right now, where we're talking about the political landscape and the elections and things like that, African women continue to be used as pawns for these politics. Black women came out with 91% of the vote to come and elect this white nationalist because that's exactly what he is. Never anybody that's in our interest that's speaking to the conditions and the reality of what African women or even African people are dealing with. It's the lesser of two evils. And they always galvanize the collective force of black women and black people to try to elect the same people who have never said not one thing specifically about black women or black people in general. And so what we're doing right now is just trying to, what they're doing is using the buzz around what's happening with black women and how we're so local and try to channel that into winning these elections or swaying whatever type of vote. We had, I was just mentioning even with this whole question of the march for the Women's March, thank you so much. The Women's March, like even in that organizing perspective, like the people who were at the helm of that, who they say was at the helm of that, were women of, black women, Arab women, Latino women, but yet it was a white women's march. And so they continue to use these spaces about black women to continue to really push the Democratic agenda and even the Republican agenda, because we've seen people like, what's their name? Who's that, Lisa? Lisa Rice, but also Spice and Cinnamon. Who are these women that's on YouTube? Simon and Silk, with their homegrown, just really just talking in layman's terms to people and saying, listen, Trump got interest, and it's really become this comedy, but in the end of it, the African women need to have something of our own that really speaks to our interests, and over and over and over again, we're galvanized by the looks of something. Black women are here, we're coming out in voter, in droves to support this and this candidate, but these candidates are really not serving our interests. And so that's why the Black Effect Coalition is so significant, because when we say we want to run candidates for office, we're saying that you have to align with all of these 19 points. And in the 19 points, it speaks to, the conditions of African women. If you don't like that, then you can't, why are we asking people to support it? And so I think that, with everything that's going on right now in this country and how they're really revving up, just highlighting black women and our voter participation, especially during this election, it's integral that African women say that we have to, this is our voice, that we don't unite with any of that, what they're doing. And so that's why it's really important right now that we're here, that we're talking about mobilizing for self-determination. We're talking about really getting to the essence of the contradiction, which isn't whether or not this Democrat or Republican is the lesser of two evils, but whether or not they're speaking to our interests. And so, as the African National Women's Organization, we say, if you're going to run on any type of platform, are you about, ending the state-sponsored kidnapping of African children? Are you going to be out here in these streets making sure that our children are not being taken or disappeared off these streets, right? Are you going to ensure that we're not going to be criminalized for just trying to survive out here? What are we going to do to improve the conditions? What's the child care, what can we do to make sure that we have child care so that women don't have to engage in some sort of adventurous act just to get a job, And these are the things that are hemming us up, and these candidates aren't really addressing that. I heard somewhere that somebody said that Hillary Clinton did more for black women, that's why we voted for her. I mean, the same Hillary Clinton that had the No Child Left Behind and really deep into the whole question around
state-sponsored kidnapping of African children and criminalize African women who are poor? Is this the same woman who said that black men are the super predator? I mean, these are, that's why I think it's really important for us to be engaged in these discussions around what's happening so that we can't get bamboozled every single time there's an election that happens. And, it's really important for us to listen to Black Agenda Report or read the Burning Spear newspaper, to really see the analysis on a piece-by-piece basis, to really break down the science of what politics is and how we're being used, and then really organize for our own interests. Organize in the street. We should have had more people out there yesterday. This is talking about AFRICOM and militarism in our communities and how this is really impacting how African people are able to even organize here. Because we have the Black identity extremists, we have police who come into our community, we have all these agencies that are operating to keep African people oppressed and keeping our communities under siege. And so it's really important that African women play a role in making sure that we are organizing around these particular issues. It's not enough to come out just around gender issues. It's enough, we have to come out here and organize around the things that are happening in our communities every day that impact us or don't impact us, but basically serve to decrease our freedom as African people and goes against everything we seek to understand around African liberation. Because it's not liberatory to vote for Hillary Clinton. It's not liberatory to even vote for Andrew Gillum. You know what I mean? It's not liberatory to do any of this stuff. It doesn't mean that we are still in the grasp of this colonial capitalist environment. And if we're not talking about freedom, I don't know what we're talking about. If we're not talking about, dismantling the whole entire system, then what we're doing is just picking the lesser of two evils and allowing for the same two-party system to continue to, dictate whether or not Black people get our little pieces of crumbs off the table. Right. And so that's why it's important, again, for African women, for Black women to be a part of organizations, to constantly be in this thing, struggling to ensure that all Black women don't get bamboozled by the politics of white women and the political parties and Hillary Clinton, because she keep reemerging. She won't go away. She keep popping up. I mean, she was talking at this, this thing in New York where they was talking about women who had their children killed by the police, and she's just popping up in all these different places, and she won't go away. She's coming back, for the next election, and she just, she's revving up. And so when that time comes around, before that time comes around, we should be booing Hillary Clinton everywhere that she goes. We should probably throw a little rock at her knees or something like that, just to let us, people know that she's trash, and everything that she stands for is trash. She's an imperialist thug that was coordinated the bombing on our Africa. That's right. This is the imperialist thug that criminalized millions of African women who are poor in these countries. This is the same capitalist imperialist thug that moves around our communities like she's the first Black, first lady and stuff like that. This is where we are right now. And so, it's really important for organizations, really important for Black women to really be a part of this political analysis and bring it up, organize in the streets around the conditions that impact us every day, and bring out the snakes who try to hide behind our Black face or use us as weaponry against, their class enemy. And everything that we do right now has to be around really building in our interests, preserving the right to really build our capacity to be in these streets and making sure that we can have a freedom in our lifetime. I just want to thank you so much for this time. We got to build Black women, and we got to build a Black and Black coalition.
So next, I will be bringing up Comrade Betty Soto and Oseno Magani. Thank you. For call for membership and resources.
comrades, brothers and sisters. Like the young comrade introduced, my name is Yoshitela back again, I'm the treasurer of the Black Spark Coalition. And yesterday we had set a goal, we fell short of our goal. But today I know in this room we can pull out this $2,000 goal that we have set. And those people who are online too, please make sure you make your pledges. And I'm here with my comrade, who is over membership. And you know, resources, money, and recruitment and membership is the life of any organization. But we don't just want to take your money without letting you know the kind of work that we've been doing for the last 9 years, since our founding in 2009.
So my name is Betty Joe, and I am the membership coordinator of the Black Coalition. And yesterday we witnessed one of our many great events, historical events. But you have yet to see the 9 years worth of what the Black is Back has done. So today we're going to present to you what we have done for the past 9 years, going on 10.
Remember, this is for the fly-by-night organization, as the chairman was saying here, and everybody has, alluded to. So, can somebody hit the lights?
So we can come up with popular and catchy slogans like Black Lives Matter, but without making demands, we mislead the masses of our people to no end. Making demands leads us to the sticking point question, to what end? What are we fighting for? What are we really saying when we say Black Lives Matter? And who are we saying it to? Definitely not us. We know that our lives matter, but Black power matters more. This is our fight, Black power over our lives, period. And these are our demands, just among the many of our demands, that reparations now. Okay, we do need, gentrification is happening through education, through the health. So those are our demands. Stop gentrification in all forms of fashion. U.S. out of Iraq, Afghanistan, Palestine, the Middle East. Hands off Iran. The drug wars in the United States, we demand that cease and desist. Free all political prisoners, those are our demands. End Black mass incarceration, stop police violence. And that is a crying demand. No to U.S. wars and occupations, domination and exploitation, and no to AFRICOM, out of Africa. And you have heard from our steering committee, but I'll just briefly introduce them again. We have our chairman, Omali Yoshitela, chairman of the African People's Socialist Party, and he's the chair of the BIB. Lisa Davis, BIB vice chair. She's also the BIB Healthcare Working Group, the chair of the Healthcare Working Group. Alika Ngoma, the BIB secretary. And our wonderful Michelle. Oseno Mbenga, our treasurer. Timba Shabanda, our web and social media coordinator. That's me. Betty Joe, I'm the membership coordinator. Omali K. Fing, he's the media coordinator. Make sure he gets all that information to all media sources. Glen Ford, BIB co-founder, Black Agenda Report. Nellie Bailey, co-founder of the Harlem Tenants Council. Ajamu Baraka, national organizer for the Black Alliance for Peace. And he was also the vice presidential candidate for 2016. Khalid Rahim, the chairman for New African Independence Party. Zaki Baruti, President General Universal African People's Organization. Reverend Edward Pickney, Chair of Black Autonomy Network Community Organization, Banco. Betty Davis, New Abolitionist Movement, Chair of the BIB Education Working Group. And you heard from all of them yesterday, they're all powerful. Ralph Pointer, Lynn Stewart Committee, is the chair of the BIB Political Prisoners Working Group, putting in some real work. Dia Olopala, chair of the BIB Black Community Control and Police Working Group. Cam Howard and Cobra, Amos T. Wilson Institute, he's the BIB Reparations Working Group chair. Ekimba Omali Ojuri, founder of the Global Ubuntu Foundation. And that's him on the ground working. Jihad, this is our newest member to our committee. Jihad Abdul Mit, chairperson of the National Jericho Movement to free all political prisoners. Larry Ham, the chairman of the People's Organization for Progress, POP. That's our steering committee. And I'm sure we're going to grow in steering committee members today.
Okay, we know the time to raise thing was we have 5 minutes, and so what we wanted to do, we want to just go quickly on the campaigns, you know, and then everybody, you know, in your folder, you place an envelope and this red play card, you know, on your folder. So please have it already, and whilst we just rush through this coverage, you know, if you can just go through the actions and campaigns quickly.
This was our first march on the White House, as you witnessed yesterday. This was the first one, and we demanded what we demand. This started in 2009. Political prisoner Imam Jamil Al-Amin, Rat Brown, he's in dire need of medical attention. And there are so many political prisoners that are just in dire need and should not be where they're at. This is when we were in Miami, 2010, National March to Defend Haiti. And there's much that we can say, but because of time, we're just gonna go through the PowerPoint. Okay, Philadelphia, another march. This was our International Day of Action, where we had Milwaukee, Belgium, Germany, and the Bahamas all in one day doing the same action. Break the silence. Everything you see here is either a march or a conference, some mobilization that impacts our people in significant ways. So we're just gonna let you see what we have, what we've been doing. Hands off Assata. They upped her bomb bounty by $1 million. Obama? Victory to Syria, we were chanting that yesterday. This was in Harlem, 2013. Same 2013, this was in St. Petersburg. Healthcare Working Group, they're poisoning our women with these Depo-Provera shots, birth control, they're sterilizing our people. This was our 5th International Annual Conference, also in honor of Marcus Garvey's birthday as well. Black Power. Our protest in Ferguson, our mobilization after Mike Brown. They just left him there, just rotting for everybody to see. This was our national demonstration after Mike Brown on Washington. Our unity and solidarity with our comrades, our Mexican and Latin American comrades. again, 2015 in Pennsylvania, in the Little Furniture Store, Black Power Matters. The uprising after the murder of Freddie Gray, that was a huge mobilization. Justice or else. What is the or else? That part. This is another conference in Harlem, our annual conference in Harlem 2016, during the time they were getting ready for another president. 2017, our first electoral school, March on Washington, the ballot and the bullet. Second electoral school in St. Louis in the new Uhuru House that's just been recently built. And this was our last conference in August in 2018 where we visited several sites, historical sites, and this one was the memorial of Mike Brown, where he was left rotting. And friends and donors, it is time for us to build this BIB and give them hell. Uhuru.
Uhuru. So when you Comrade Ikenge is standing right there, and the playing card. The first one is.
Well, we actually, could you please continue with the PowerPoint, because now we have our pledge goal. Okay, well, the goal is 2,000, you said 2,000. So here are our giving levels. Our first giving level is Queen Mother Ya Asantewa, $1,000 or more. We must face it. While we have been marching for jobs, jobs have been marching out of this country in search of new slaves in foreign countries. Jobs are marching into prisons where they can legally work to racially profiled black men and women to death, again, without pay.
She was our first fundraising coordinator.
We have our second giving level, Chokwe Lumumba, $500. I only came to this movement because of King and he was killed. I only stayed in the movement because of Malcolm and he was killed. Then I became a leader. Marcus Garvey, $365. A people without knowledge of their past history, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. You will fall. Amiri Baraka, $120 or more. A man is either free or he is not. There cannot be an apprenticeship for freedom. And our last giving level is Fatty Muhammad, $60 or more. Nobody's free until everybody's free. There's a giving level here for every one of us. Every one of us can give on one of these levels.
Yes, Uhuru. So please, if you can go ahead and fill out the cards and indicate how much you want to donate. Is there anybody here who wants to donate the $1,000? I know we're out of time. We're doing it very quick so that we can go and eat too.
And well, we called for $1,000 to begin with is because in our venues there have been people who can actually donate that $1,000.
And we've gone into venues that cost us $1,000 too. Anybody? Okay, what about the second $500? Chokwe, $200.
Is there 5 people here who can give $200?
And those online, if you're listening, please make sure that you also, go to our website, www.blackispaccoalition.org, and make your donation.
And we also have our computers set up outside for those of you who raised your hands yesterday to join the Black is Back. We'll be outside with our computer and we can sign it on right there.
And then you have the immediate Baraka, $120. Anybody?
You also pay in installments, right? So if they want to pledge 120, they can pay it in installments.
Yeah, they can pay them in installments, you know, and you don't have to give it yours. So that's why you have to pay card money and then.
Right. You can pledge. You can pledge. You don't have to give the $1,000 right cash right now.
Okay.
Pledge.
I was just talking about immediate Baraka and he's supporting $120. Like, and
So, I can do the dollar a day, can you 65?
I can do that too.
all right, Gary. You know, we are 24th century Gavians. And the final new hammer is for $60. Anybody? Oh, okay. All right, come here, sister. Okay, we have 2 more people down there. You have your card, right? Yeah, fill it out, please. And the order, okay, $20. Somebody has to, you know, everybody here should be able to give us $20. All right.
So keep your hands up.
Please keep your hands up so that you know, so that you can get the cards. Or if you want to give it to us, $20 right now.
Yeah, you can write it on the.
No, if you have the cash too.
Put it
Okay,
in
you
the
can get
envelope, and I think it'll collect it.
Yeah, Mosi is back there waving his $20.
You do know that it's we that make this happen. No one's going to do it for us. We have to do it ourselves.
Uhuru Complex, thank you very much. And the complex chairman is also.
Yes.
Remember Africans, you know, we the only ones that's going to sponsor our revolution. We don't have to depend on anybody else to do this. And I know we have the ability. Just, you know, we are not poor, we are impoverished people.
Yes.
Because Africa is sitting on the wealth that this whole damn planet Earth, you know, like is surviving on. And now we want to reclaim those resources. Yes, the time is come. Thank you very much, comrades. Uhuru. Before we leave, we'll announce the amount of money that we have collected and including what we got from yesterday too.
Yes.
Okay, Uhuru.
Black is back!
Black is back!
Okay, so now is the time where you need to go look at all of these vendors, because when we say, we don't just say buy black, because buy black could be buying an Obama t-shirt. We say buy black power, because we need to buy things that's going to help us in this revolution. We need to buy things that are going back into the black community. So buy decolonize and buy arrow and go to the terminal Omali table, black community control the police. We need to go to the clothing vendors, y'all, because get you butted out, get like me, you know, and get your black community control the police shirts. Get you, I got the backpack too, you know, from this table, I got the necklaces, the purses, you know, just get your Uhuru swag on so you can walk into the white community like I'm making you uncomfortable. You know, so it's now time to go on break. Okay, and we will be back at 4 p.m.